Hey guys, it's Scott with Scottie B Cards. In this video, we're going to be grading the grading companies from worst to best. We're going to be looking at the top 4 grading companies in sports card and TCG collecting, and we're going to grade them from worst to best. I did this a few years ago, and a lot has changed in those few years. Even the order of what companies are in first, second, third, and fourth have changed a little bit, in my opinion. So I want to talk about each of these individual grading companies, the pros, the cons, and everything in between. Without further ado, these are the 4 grading companies. We have SGC, we have BGS, we have PSA, and we have CGC. One thing you'll notice is this slab says CSG, but they have changed their company to CGC to match the trading card side. You're gonna hear a lot of abbreviations thrown at you, and I'll do my absolute best to keep it straightforward and clear, but just know you're gonna hear all of these a bunch of times. I wanna note that every single grader has overgraded, undergraded, and misgraded cards, so I'm not gonna put that against these graders too much. If there's a very obvious issue, I'll call it out. That's consistent, but I just wanna point that out. They all have had their own problems, and every grader has drama when it comes to internal issues. PSA's had some stuff. I know CGC, well, CSG prior has had some stuff. BGS is going through some stuff. We're not going to dive too deep into any of these unless they're active, like the BGS situation. So without further ado, let's just jump into this. At number 3B, and I could have put this company as solely number 3 and the company at 3A at number 4, but I think in regards to sports card opinion of the company at 3A, which is BGS, not to spoil anything, they are viewed more favorably than CGC, but CGC is grading significantly more cards. I don't want to spoil anything, but later in this video, we're going to dive into the gem rates, and we're also going to be looking at how many cards each company has graded in the month of October and throughout the year. CGC is 3 times, 4 times higher than BGS at this point. CGC done a great job, honestly, since they've been around. So very first thing, the pros. They are huge in other industries. They're very reputable. This is big, in comic books, they're big in TCG, they're big in sports cards, they're big in currency, in paper money as well as coins. They're one of the premier grading companies. They're also big in video games, other different companies. They are around, and they have collectibles in every industry, which is good because they have a lot of money behind them and they're reputable. They are big in Pokemon, like I just mentioned. They are second only to PSA when it comes to grading Pokemon cards. Even though they're third or fourth, depending on the month, in sports cards, they are number 2 in Pokemon cards, pretty wide margin, honestly. One thing I like about CGC personally, but this is kind of accepted widely, is that their cases are very clear. That's the most clear plastic of every single grading company's cases, which sets them apart from others. Refractors, cards that have foil on them, they look very good. At times you wouldn't even think they were graded. I know that sounds dramatic, but that is a pro of their cases. They do have accurate, strict grading. They have reputable graders. The graders came over from BGS, at least their head grader did, and other graders that I know of that I've met there. So they do have accurate, reputable graders, which is good for CGC. They don't have upcharges typically. We're gonna talk about upcharges throughout this video, and what an upcharge is, basically if you grade a card and it grades a specific way, or if it's worth a specific amount of money, the grading company will charge you more than what they actually charge you originally because it shouldn't have been in that service to begin with. It should have been in the higher service. I don't believe that CGC upcharges unless it's a very crazy situation with a very expensive card. Different than PSA, we're going to talk about, they upcharge all the time, and that's a con of theirs. But for CGC, they don't upcharge typically. They grade a lot of air cards that no one else grades. So this is one big pro, especially in the TCG space. In TCG, for those that collect sports cards, means trading card game, they grade miscut cards or misprinted cards, all these different things that PSA or SGC wouldn't touch. CGC not only knows what they are, but they'll grade them for you and explain what it is. So that's a huge pro for them that people do like. They are the cheapest cost per card without and with a membership. So if you have a membership, it's going to be $8.50 a card, which is crazy if you want to do bulk. Without a membership, it's $11 per card. And we'll look at the pricing in just a moment. They do free autograph grading, basically meaning if there's an autograph on the card, they won't charge you extra for it. They'll just put the grade on the back, which is great. And they do have a money back guarantee. Other grading companies do. I believe PSAs and CGC are the 2 main ones, meaning that if the card that they are grading gets damaged, or if the card they graded is actually fake, they will refund you the value of the card, which is big. They do have a great grading scale as well. Their grading scale matches the scale of SGC, who we will talk about. It's 1 through 10, but their 10 is their gem mint. That is the same as PSA and SGC. All 3 of SGC, PSA, and CGC, the 10 is the gem mint. BGS, on the other hand, 9.5 is gem mint. For CGC, the company right here, their 9.5 is considered mint plus. So it's actually not gem mint. It's not equal to BGS's grade. This 10 is technically what BGS deems is the equal grade at CGC. CGC. But the good thing about their grading scale is if you don't get a 10, it might not be a 9. That's the issue with a lot of it. It's like it's a 9 one day, it's a 10 another day. It's inconsistent. They have a 9.5 mint plus, meaning that it's in between. That does help the floor of your submissions, because if you don't get the 10, you might get a 9.5, which helps. Cons, there's drama around comic books, at least there was. Like the actual inside sleeve was like bending or something, but I don't know what's going on there. If you want to check that out, check out Neo Cards and Comics. He's another channel who discusses it, but I don't know if that's finished or been discussed by CGC. Their grading scale change, their name/branding change, and their Pokemon slab change have all been cons for them. People that liked them left the company. They're building back up, but as an example, their grading scale change, like I mentioned with their grading scale, have the 9.5 be the mint plus. Prior, they actually copied BGS scale. Well, I don't know if they copied it, but they shared BGS's scale, meaning if it was a 9.5, it was gem mint. A 10 was pristine, meaning they didn't give 10s out very often. But they changed the grading scale to copy PSA and SGC, with 10 being the gem mint grade. So they changed that, which turned some people off, and they got rid of subgrades because they used to have subgrades. Not only that, but they changed their name from CSG in sports cards to CGC, and their Pokemon is called CGC as well. So it's actually the same across all different cards, which was the reason for it. And they changed the Pokemon slabs. This used to be like a big blue slab. Same with sports cards, but it's bigger in Pokemon and another TCG. Big blue slab. They made it smaller. It looks just like this. That actually made some people upset. That's one of the cons. But as of right now, if you're new to them, you have no idea, and maybe it's a pro. You like the way they look. They're not favorable in most sports card collector eyes yet. I think that could change if people hold them in hand. If they get a card graded by them, they buy one on the secondary market because their costs are so competitive and people are grading with them, that can all change it. Their cases do scuff easily. That's one con. I've noticed that with my own cases, but just take care of them. And then the cards do not go for as much as other top companies like BGS or PSA still, surprisingly. And just want to point this out, this is their grading cost. So we can see bulk is $11 a card, but if you pay for their elite membership, which is like $250 a year, it's $8.80 a card. So if you grade a lot of cards, that's a great price. $8.80 is crazy. That's like pre-pandemic pricing, which we have not seen it for a very long time. Next up is BGS. BGS is Beckett Grading Services. They are well known for their subgrades. They're well known for their thick cases, both of which are pros and cons in their own right. But let's talk about the pros. The first one is a chance at a BGS 10 black label. One thing I didn't note with SGC and CGC, because their grading scales are similar, they both have shots of like a pristine gold, which is like the 10, but it's perfect. But that's not as like common and not as sought after as like a BGS 10 or a BGS 10 black label. These are all viewed as like the best grades in the industry. The issue is they just don't happen very often in sports cards, happen more often in Pokemon cards, and so the odds of getting that grade can be challenging. But to give you an example of how valuable these can be, a BGS 9.5, I believe, of Shohei Ohtani went for, is an orange Bowman chromatograph. It went for like $200,000 or $130,000, something like that, something lower. But then the BGS 10 black label Ohtani orange Bowman chromatograph just sold for $530,000. And that's almost entirely because of the grade. And so just as an example of how they have really high upside, it's just hard to get that grade. They do have thick cases with inner sleeve for protection. These cards are protected in their cases. If I was going to drop a PSA, an SGC, or a CGC case, I'd be concerned about the condition of the card. I would not be concerned about the condition of the sports card in this case, in the BGS case, because it has that inner protective sleeve that you can see on this Mike Trout rookie, as well as that very thick plastic case. They're good for thick cards. They look really well in these cases, which is rare. Some of the thinner cases from other grading companies don't look quite as well. They do have subgrades, which some people love. Subgrades are a double-edged sword that we can talk about, but like it tells you exactly why the card graded the way that it did. And transparency is good for a lot of people. Like I mentioned, they're great at protecting your cards. They make sure that the card doesn't get damaged, which is one of the main things for grading, as you want the card to be protected. And this is subjective, but these flips, so like the actual like 10 pristine, all the subgrades, is popular. People like it. They like the way it looks. They have the black label, they have the gold label, they have a silver label. Prior to last year, everything graded below an 8.5 was this ugly white label. It was horrible, it looked horrible, but they changed that to be silver, so that's good. So overall, it's not as big of a deal if you get below an 8.5 with BGS now. They don't have upcharges that I know of, so you won't be charged like PSA if a card grades well or if it's worth a lot of money. And they do have autograph authentication if you want to go through that route. You do have to pay extra if you want the card to be authenticated and graded. That is like extra couple dollars to have the autograph viewed, but they do have their own separate authentication for the autographs as well. And their grading scale is a pro because, again, you can see all what's happening right here. One thing I'll note though is the grading scale is also a con because that 9.5 is gem mint and the 10 is pristine. So we're viewing this 10 as higher quality than like the PSA 10 or the CGC 10 or the SGC 10, because this is a 10 pristine. It's not supposed to be viewed as the same grade according to BGS, but the problem is their 9.5 gem mint is the same as the mint plus of other grading companies, and those that are newer to the hobby don't realize that, and so that can hurt the value of their gem mint cards and give you less reason to grade with them, because if you're going to get a gem mint card at PSA, it's a 10, which is great. That's the best you can do. If you get a gem mint card at BGS, it's a 9.5, and you have these subgrades, and it might be a min gem 9.5, meaning it's 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, and a 9 surface as an example, and that's worth less than a true gem when they're all 9.5. It can just get confusing. So like I just mentioned, subgrades make the cards harder to move and for less at times. Like not all grades are created equal, and that transparency can make it more difficult to move cards. The brand is weak. Currently, there are internal lawsuits and less cards are getting graded. It's crazy. On top of that, Gem Mint 9.5 is worth less than the PSA and even SGC Gem Mint 10 at this point. Confusing scale for beginners. Like, yes, it's cool, but it's confusing compared to just 1 through 10 and no subgrades. And the biggest issue to me are the slabs are inconsistent. So you can see like right here, the fonts will change depending on the card and so forth. There also were fake slabs at one point, which was a major problem. It's not as common now, but that was something that we had to look out for in the past. And the slabs aren't as clear because they do have the thick plastic, and then they also have the inner sleeve. What cards should you grade with them? Bowman chromatographs are great. Cards with minor corner issues are great because of the way subgrades are calculated, and cards with minor surface flaws, because you can get a 9 surface or a 9 corners and still get a 9.5 if everything else is a 9.5. Thick cards are also great for BGS. So here's their pricing and turnaround. If you want subgrades, which you will with BGS for the most value, it's $17.95 a card, which is really expensive for the base 45-day plus turnaround time compared to like even PSA gets cards around a lot faster than that, and they're cheaper. So what about SGC? They have really moved up. They have really established themselves as a major grading company. They were even purchased by the parent company of PSA lately. The pros for SGC, they're great for vintage. Probably the best grading company for vintage in general. PSA is there as well, but SGC is fantastic. They grade a majority of cards that are pre-1950s. All of the thin tobacco cards, they're almost always in SGC holders, it feels like, or PSA, and they do a great job. Non-sports are huge in SGC slabs as well. When I say non-sports, I mean like presidential cards, or I have an Edgar Allan Poe card from 1888. Like that is usually in an SGC slab. You do have a chance at a gold label 10, which is cool. We talked about the grading scale at length already, so I won't go too much depth because it is similar to the CGC scale. The cases present well on some cards. Like this Mike Trout white border on the black looks really nice in my opinion, but other cards it doesn't look quite as good, but they present well. Best turnaround times for the cost in the industry by far. It's a 5 to 10 day turnaround at most, and it's only like $15. You really can't beat their pricing, and you really can't beat their turnaround times, which is a huge trademark of SGC. Low cost for grading, like I mentioned, it's only $15 for their lowest cost, but that gets you basically any card graded, which is fantastic. They're also very transparent. Peter, who is I think the CEO of SGC, he will always just say exactly why they're late on turnaround times. He'll say exactly what their plans are. He'll tell you exactly what's going on at the company, and it's really appreciated by a lot of collectors. They actually will grade the autograph on the card at no cost. If there's an autograph, so if this Mike Trout was a pack certified autograph or top certified autograph, then they would grade that for free if it was a 10. If it's not a 10 autograph grade, they wouldn't even grade it. They would just ignore it, which I like. Their grading scale is a huge pro because like I mentioned, just like CGC, it's nice to have, and they don't have upcharges either. They also don't require a membership, which is nice to sub with them. Like PSA, in order to get some of the perks, CGC to get some of the perks, you have to have a membership to get some of those. The cons, they are owned by PSA now. So a lot of people would submit to SGC to say, I'm not going to give PSA my money. I don't like the way they grade. Well, now you kind of are giving PSA your money because they're owned by collectors. So it's one of those things where just be aware they are a big corporation. Now they're not a small mom and pop shop. They never really were, but they are owned by a major company. They do have low value on modern cards compared to PSA, which again, almost every company here besides maybe BGS is the case. The slabs are polarizing. Some love them and some hate them. I don't really like them myself. It's because I don't think some of the cards do not present well in the case. I have a black bordered card of a rookie and it gets lost in the case. It doesn't look good. The slabs are rather bulky and cheap. This is maybe a personal opinion, but I think these are the cheapest feeling slabs in hand. Very flimsy plastic. Feels like you could just crack them open if you wanted to. I've cracked them open with just like a quarter before. They do not authenticate autographs, so they will grade the pack pulled autos, but if you had like an aftermarket autograph on this Mike Trout card, they wouldn't grade it. They don't do that service. And thick cards do move slightly in the case. I have a patch card that does move a little bit. They grade very tough on Pokemon, extremely tough on Pokemon, which it can be a downside to Pokemon collectors. What kind of card should you grade with SGC? Cards with slight surface flaws and roller lines, they usually are pretty lenient on the surface is what I've noticed in the past when I graded with them. So you can get a 9.5 or a 10 with some surface damage. Do not send in off-center cards though, because they will nail you on that. That's also what I found out. Here's their pricing and turnaround time. Like I said, standard 5 to 10 day is $15. If you want it done in 1 to 2 days, it's only $40, which is crazy. Obviously have to do it based off of the pricing, but $1,500 is a really high threshold for most cards. And PSA is number one. We'll go quickly through PSA because they are the best grading company. It's not a secret. They are the clear number one grading company in the industry. They have the highest ROI. On top of that, they're simple and consistent. Like here's the label right here for PSA. It's how they've looked for years. Every single card, whether it's Pokemon, whether it's going to be sports cards, whether it's going to be whatever it's going to be, they're going to have this simple little flip right here, which people like. Has a hologram on the front, has a QR code in the back to scan, lets you have a scan of the image when you scan it for most services. So they do a great job with that. On top of that, their scale is the easiest to understand. It's 1 through 10. If you get a 9, you get a 9. If you get a 10, you get a 10. They're great for modern, they're great for vintage, they're great for TCG, and basically everything else. That's one pro, is no matter what you send to them, they will grade it, and they are a good company to have your card authenticated with. They also do have a set registry, which is a big deal. People love the registry where they can go in and keep track of all their cards in that specific set or that specific player. They have clear slabs, not as clear as CGC, but that is a pro. They do present well. I got a Mookie Betts back here that I just got back from PSA, and it looks really nice in hand. And they do provide grader's notes for everything above bulk. So if you have everything above bulk, they'll let you know why the card graded that specific way. It's not public. PSA won't give it to you if you got it on the secondary market, but if you graded the card, they'll let you know why it didn't get a 10 if it didn't get a 10. On top of that, they do have autograph authentication with dual grades, where they'll grade the card and the autograph, or just the autograph if you'd prefer. And they are getting into other industries. They're in comic books now, and they're going to keep expanding, in my opinion. And they have the strongest money back guarantee, meaning if the card is fake that they grade, they will refund you what you paid, which is nice. The cons, they're the most expensive. Maybe not by far, because BGS actually challenges them in a lot of ways for that, but they are expensive compared to other grading companies. They also have upcharges that pisses people off a lot of the time. These upcharges mean, like, if you say the card's worth $200 and you submit it in a $200 max declared value and it's worth $800, they will upcharge you for grading that card, and you'll have to pay extra, and it'll be automatic. There are also new terms of service is strict on how cards can be submitted and what packaging and what holders, all of that as well. If you crack the cards out yourself and they see it's a numbered card and they know what the grade was previously, they will not grade your card, and they'll ban that card from being graded at PSA. All of this is pretty strict, and they do have longer turnaround times compared to SGC. Maybe not CGC anymore, honestly, because PSA is doing a great job at getting their cards turned around. I had an order that was supposed to be done in the middle of December, finished in like 3 weeks from the 1st of October till the end of October. It was finished, so that's great. Their dual service does cost more to grade their autographs, while some companies do it for free. Some 10s aren't 10s and some 9s aren't 9s. You could say this about every grading company, but a few of the other grading companies have a 9.5, right? They have the 9.5 Mint Plus, meaning if it's in the middle, they'll give it a 9.5. With PSA, it's either a 9 or a 10. So if it's in the middle, it's up to the grader to decide. So sometimes one card might be a 9, 85% of the time, but it is in that 15% of the time where it got a 10. Or another card may be a 10, 90% of the time, but it's in that 10% chance it gets a 9, and they'll give it a 9. So that's one inconsistent, unfortunate thing. What kind of card should you grade with them? Anything. Grade anything you want with them, because it's a good company to go with. They can grade relatively off-centered, even majorly off-centered cards at times that can still get a 10. So that's what you should send here versus like a SGC. And off-center backs is the same thing. Minor corner dings on the back aren't a huge deal either. If they're minor, they can still get a 10. And I've even passed surface dimples through PSA myself without issue. So here's their pricing. They also have confusing pricing. If you want to send just one card in, not in bulk, it's going to be $25. So it's expensive. If you do bulk, it's going to be $19 with sports cards or $15 with TCG cards. And they also do have these monthly membership grading options. So this is for September. It was 50 Pokemon cards at $12.99 an item, but it does have the max declared value of only $200, which is pretty low. But they do have these monthly grading options as well. One thing I'll note, if you do want to grade with PSA, I do have an exclusive code with them for $25 off your first order if you were to sign up. If you want to do that, use my code ScottieB25. If you do, that's basically the cost again of one card. So you can get basically a card for free by grading with them. So use ScottieB25 when you're checking out and entering this code. It'll get you that discount. Okay, so let's talk about total items graded. In October, PSA graded 1.45 million, while everybody else didn't even get close to half of that number, which is insane. It just shows how big they are, but you'll be surprised to know CGC is at 207,000, SGC is 165,000, and Beckett is so far behind at 50,000. Like, that's all they graded the whole month, which is crazy. So if we look at items graded by month, we can see PSA is just going up and up and up, which people thought we had like hit the ceiling. We have not hit that ceiling yet for grading cards. And if I go to the next slide, we can remove PSA from this equation, you'll see CGC is still doing really well, and they're also going up. They're doing a great job. SGC is going up, BGS is flat to down, unfortunately, but these companies are doing well, and you can see CGC is competitive. They have a ton of TCG cards, more so than sports cards, while SGC has a bunch of sports cards and significantly less TCG cards. This is the number of items graded by era. You'll notice like for sports cards, they have a ton of vintage cards for SGC, while hardly any for BGS. Actually, CGC also does have some, more so than even PSA, but you can pause this, take a look, and get an idea of number of items graded by era. I want to focus lastly on gem rates. Like I mentioned, don't submit Pokemon cards to SGC. Here is why. To get a gem mint card at PSA, you have a 67% chance on a modern Pokemon card. At BGS, it's an 81% chance for 9.5 gem mint. At SGC, it's a 45% chance, and at CGC, it's a 61% chance. So SGC is like the worst option for grading Pokemon. That is the truth even for 2010s Pokemon cards and other TCG cards. 46% at PSA, 53% at BGS, 19% at SGC, and 46% at CGC. So just be aware of that. You can look at gem rates per era, per sport, all that good stuff. But basically, even at PSA, you have a 50-50 chance on sports cards if it'll get a 10 for 2020s card, and you can see all the way down what the odds are of getting that grade. And lastly, here are the values of these cards. You'll see that currently ahead is still the BGS 10 Pristine. I did not put the gold labels for like CGC or SGC because they don't happen often. I also didn't include the black label for BGS. But you can get an idea. The green line is PSA. There's not a CGC on here, but you can tell that they usually match what SGC is doing, which are both above the blue line, which is BGS for these Mike Trout cards. So that's kind of all you need to know. If you want to make the most money, PSA is a great option. If you want to go for the Hail Mary, if the card's perfect, go BGS. If you like the way it looks, go CGC, and so forth. Just take all of the information I provided earlier and feel free to submit to who you feel is best for your cards. Other than that, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.